I said, do you think I could do a marathon? And you went, well, sure you can. We're just going to walk, we're going to walk 56K. Of course you could do a marathon. I was thinking, I guess I could do a marathon. And in my head, that was it. You told me that I could. And from that day, I was like, okay, I can.
Hi, I'm Anna Liptak and I've been a fitness trainer now for over 15 years. Over this time, I've been privy to witness so many ordinary people achieve so many wonderful things. Through this podcast and a documentary I co-produced, I'm Not a Runner, I want to share these stories to show everyone that anything is possible if you have the belief and the motivation. Chantel Peacock, from zero to standing on the winner's podium, Chantel shares the secrets of her success. Celebration of every step, consistency, her adventures, and how important it is to fuel and hydrate through a marathon. Through this podcast, Chantel will have you inspired, lacing up and heading out that door in no time. This morning we are talking with Chantel Peacock. Chantel, thank you for being here today. You've been training with me for quite some time now, but most special to me is that you've been a long-term running partner and we've achieved so much together. But firstly, Chantel, can you tell us about yourself?
Yep, sure. My name is Chantel Peacock. I have been training with you for 12 years now. And the reason I'm so sure of that time frame is that I started when my youngest daughter was 6 months old. So however, I always know however old she is, that's how long I've been training with you.
And I remember that because you were going to sign up for 6 weeks and 6 weeks only. And you said, I really can only do 6 weeks because at the time you and your husband were starting a new business and you were really financially strapped.
We had no money. So yeah, it was a birthday present. And that's how I also remember because it was on my birthday.
Which is now, this week.
This time, yeah. So it would be about this week. So it was a birthday present. I really wanted to do something for myself. Lily was just 6 months old at the time and I was still breastfeeding her. So I kind of like said to Finn, I really want this, it looks really good. It's just three mornings a week. And Finn was, how are you going to get up? You're already sleep deprived, are you sure you want to do this? And I'm like, no, I really think just those 3 hours, 1 hour, 3 times a week will really help. So, I was definitely just doing 6 weeks because, I was adamant I could do it on my own. And 6 weeks turned into 12 years.
12 years. Well, thank you for being with me for 12 years because they've been very special to me all that time that you've been with me. What made you stay after that 6 weeks?
I think I just felt so good. I just was so much happier in my day-to-day life. I just felt happier. So for me, it was about when I've had that hour of exercise for myself, when I went back into the kids and the family and the business that was just starting, and I had 3 kids under 3. We were starting a new business, which was pretty intense. We had very little money, so everything was quite tight. And I was just better. It enabled me to deal with everything better. I was just a happier person. It made me a better mum, a better wife, better at the business, better at thinking. It just made me feel better about everything. So
your
I just
husband
couldn't let it go.
was quite happy to give you another program, obviously, because you were a better person for him.
Yeah. No, I don't ever remember it being a question after the 6 weeks that I wouldn't continue doing it. The transformation in myself was just so great within me that, it wasn't even it was kind of like, I got to keep doing this. It wasn't even, I just remember it just being, okay, we've got to go. And that was it. And
so had you exercised before then?
Not really. I'd maybe done a couple of fun runs. I lived in Sydney for 3 years. I'd done a couple of fun runs. I think I did 2 fun runs. This is a funny story. So one was a 5K and one was a 10K. And I remember my friend now, Vanessa, literally dragging me around this fire. It was the most horrendous experience because, I obviously didn't train for it. I just, 5K. I remember both of them just being torturous, like not being able to breathe, having to stop and walk, saying, are we nearly there yet? Oh my God, really? Like we're just around the corner, you said the finish. I remember it being really painful and unpleasant and definitely not going back to it. Yeah, it was just like a one-off.
Yeah, and I remember you vividly coming into the classes and you certainly, from my perspective, couldn't run a kilometre.
No way.
And you were at the back of the class, which doesn't matter.
I was at the back of the class. I was. We had a term. There was the fast. There was the fast, and the fast. The fast was really the slowest. And I was in the fast. But you know what? I did not care. I didn't feel like I was the slowest. I could see each week I'd slightly get better and things would slightly get easier. So for me, I wasn't even looking to the person at the front of the class thinking I want to be like them. I was just happy to be there and to feel better and to have someone to run along with, whoever it was.
Yeah.
At the time.
And I think that's been the beauty of watching you over the 12 years. So for people who are listening, you've now become a marathon runner and run many marathons. So from someone who really couldn't run, you've been actually standing on the platform, coming first, second or third in some marathons and running events now. So that's a huge level that you've gone from. How have you done that? Like what I mean, from my perspective, what I've seen is that you've just celebrated the whole way through.
Yeah, and I think I never had this aim to be, at the start when I started, I never had an aim to run a marathon. That wasn't my goal, like that wasn't in my head. But as a little girl, actually, I always kind of assumed, like my dad had done a half marathon, and I always sort of assumed it was something I would get to. But when I first started with Hair Time, it certainly wasn't one of my goals to do a marathon, let alone to do, however many I've done. But I think the secret is that I never ever compared myself to anybody else. It was only really about me. It sounds selfish, but in today's society we're not supposed to be selfish, but it was only really about my own achievements and how good I felt in myself. And I could live in that moment or that hour, and then then I could just get on with the rest of my day. So it was just that one little bit for me, I think. And I never compared myself to anybody else. And I did just enjoy every win, like every little thing that I did. I remember doing the City to Bay in an hour and a half, and just being amazed that I did the City to Bay and being really proud and pleased and going home to my family and going, oh, I just did it, in an hour and a half, and look at me and how
Which
cool
is fantastic, right?
Which is amazing.
Which is what it should be. People should celebrate.
Yeah.
Rather than be disappointed and set up expectations. It's just about not having expectations and doing it one step at a time.
Yeah, and I think that's what I've learned as well over this last year. So I have been running lots of marathons, and I've got a knee condition that is going to probably prevent me from running anymore. And I'm kind of starting, I haven't run for 3 months, so I'm kind of starting back on track. And that's kind of where I'm at. You've got to just embrace where you're at right now and the little goals that you make. So it's really about kind of just embracing where you're at and enjoying what you're doing. So yeah, it's an interesting journey.
Yeah, and I remember doing, we did the 12Ks, we did the half marathon down in the Barossa, and we did lots of different events. And I think that's one of the things, is having a goal that you can work towards, has certainly brought us all along.
Yep.
But one of the most significant ones I remember doing with you was the 56 kilometre Trailblazer.
Yes.
And you asked a question.
And that's really what set the whole thing off. Was I think we had done the half man previously,
yes,
and we did the team event, which was 56 trail event, which really is a jog stroke walk. You basically hike, most of it. So there's lots of fun. There was the four of us. We had so much fun chatting and laughing, and I can still, in my head, I can actually picture where we were when we had this conversation. I know. So do you remember we were going up a check?
Yep.
And I remember I looked to you and said, oh, we can do 56 kilometres today. And you said, yeah. And I said, do you think I could do a marathon? And you went, well, sure you can. We're just going to walk. We're going to walk 56K. Of course you could do a marathon. I remember thinking, oh, I guess I could do a marathon. And in my head, that was it. You told me that I could. And from that day, I was like, okay, I can.
Yeah.
And it was as simple as that. And I think once you realised, for me at that stage, there was nothing about times. There was nothing about splits. All for me, it was actually completing that distance. Would I be able to complete the 42 kilometre distance? And you told me I could. And I was about to run 56K. So in my head, it was just, yeah, okay, I can.
And that's it, isn't it? It's having someone believe in you, I think, and then you having the belief in yourself that makes things happen.
Yeah.
And asking the question, and like our dear friend Heather Brooke would say, if you don't ask the question and you don't try, you'll never have your answer. So, there we were in Boston. Take us through it from your perspective.
So we landed in Boston and we were super excited to be there. So we did lots of, not too much exploring because we had big plans for after the event, but we did lots of kind of walking around, and we went to the expo, which was awesome. I love marathon expos, and the Americans know how to do expos really well. So it was
And
a
I remember a
great expo.
point in there when someone said in front of us, oh, I've done 50 marathons, and you looked at me and said, oh, we can too. And I remember thinking, oh, I thought this was my last one.
Oh yeah, that was in the queue for the pasta dinner. Do you remember that lady that I've done 50? I'm like, oh my God, I thought you had to stop after like 7. Anna, we can just keep
And
going.
I'm like,
You
oh
don't
my
have to
God,
stop.
this is going to continue. This woman is not going to stop.
Oh yeah, I know. I remember her too. I was like, wow, I didn't know that was a thing. Yes. So yeah, so the run itself was.
It was freezing in the
It
morning.
was so cold. Do you remember?
Yeah.
We had to say, do you remember someone gave us the advice, don't drink too much before you get on the bus because you're going to really need to be busting. And then we did drink too much on the bus, and then we were busting. Do you remember to get off? And do you remember we were dressed in the bear suit? You had that? Didn't you have a bear suit?
Well, it was almost like a bear suit.
We
But
got
can you
into
remember I nearly took
Salvo's.
my rings off to give to somebody to put in his bag? Can you remember I had some rings and they were annoying me? Anyway, well, I'll get to that afterwards. But I was so glad I didn't give it to him because we never saw him again because of the bombs.
Oh,
But
yes. Yep, so we set off on the run. And Boston is a tricky course, I think, because the hills, it's basically up and down for the first half. But if you haven't trained properly, or you go too hard on the downhills, you can really hurt your quads,
Legs,
which is what
yeah.
happened to me. My DOMs I just couldn't move properly after the halfway through. But our relationship was so good at that stage that we kind of felt comfortable. I felt comfortable just waiting back at a water station. I could see you look for me to say, come on. And I'm like, I can't go, but you've just got to go. So I feel like it was a good decision that you could just go off and then I could just
run at your own speed. That was really gracious
Yeah.
of you, though. That was really nice. And I remember that was a really hard decision, but we did it and it was fine.
Yeah, it was fine. So anyways, the point is we got separated at the halfway point. You were ahead.
I think it was at the 32K mark.
Was it? Okay.
After Heartbreak Hill.
Yeah, maybe. Okay, well, that makes me feel a bit better then. I'm getting to 32K. But we did get separated. Anna went off and I was just kind of struggling along thinking, yep, I'm going to get there. And we got to the finish line, and thankfully you were there. You were waiting just as you got the finish line. Because I think I was maybe 5 minutes behind you in the end, so not too much to wait. And thankfully, the lady over the finish line allowed you to wait for me because she said, "Oh, we're from Australia. My friend's going to be not far behind."
And usually in a marathon they say, move on, keep moving. Where she was like, oh, you're all right, darling. You could stay here. You can wait. No,
You were
thankfully.
so fortunate.
Yeah, because otherwise we were going to meet.
Otherwise,
Where the
we
bomb was.
made a recce the night before, and the idea was to go through the funnel and then literally come around.
Out
So
and
you would
about.
have been waiting exactly where the bomb went off. If not near the bomb, then you would have got caught up in the panic and everything for sure. But thankfully you were waiting. So you waited for me. We came across the line. We walked through and it was really cold.
So cold.
It was really cold.
Because otherwise we were going to go straight onto that finishing line.
And watch everybody. But again, it was so cold. So
we
we were
thought
like,
we'd just nick back to the hotel.
let's get some warm clothes on
And come
and then we
back.
can come back. The hotel was only a walk away, which we were lucky. It must have been about a K and a half, I think, the walk to the hotel. So we literally walked to the hotel. I remember going up in the lift, coming out of the lift, and then seeing a runner in tears. And our automatic reaction was, "Are you okay?" And she said, "No, there's a bomb.
There's an explosion.
There's been explosion. Explosion." And
We didn't know if it was a car or what she was
didn't know what
talking
you mean,
about.
but she was a bit muddled. So I said, "Oh, come on, let's go back to the room and let's put on the TV and we'll find out what's happened." And basically we went back to the room and that's it. We were stuck in that room, I think, for 12 hours because
Couldn't get
basically the
out.
hotel went into lockdown. You weren't allowed to leave. And the media in America is just so sensational. So basically we just watched this event unfold.
And we could hear
on
it
the
too.
media,
Can you
and
remember
could
hearing all those sirens?
hear the sirens.
And then they were talking about bombs quite near us in the library.
Yeah,
and different
because there was a
spots.
fire in the library. At the time, they didn't know what it was. It was a flyer, but they thought maybe that it was a terrorist attack and they were attacking different areas of Boston. So that's why the hotel went into lockdown and you couldn't leave. But we just basically watched it all.
It was really scary. Can you
unfold.
remember being downstairs with the people from the army because they came into all the
Yeah.
hotels and they just had those big guns
Yep.
and, you know, in the big black suits, and we were like, oh my goodness, what is going on here, remember? And we just came down for dinner and everyone was beside themselves. It was like you're in a horror movie, really.
Yeah. Well, I remember the next day and just going out into the street, literally leaving the hotel and seeing a tank just walk where the day before there'd just been tourists, and today there was a tank because...
And there were police at every corner, weren't there?
Yeah.
And army people.
Yeah. And so thankfully we managed to get a ticket out. So we left the next day just because I think we just wanted to get out of there. We had all these plans.
You were more, oh, we've got to get out, we've got to do this. And I was like, oh, can't we just stay around?
No, I was like, yeah, we got to get out. We got to get out. So I think Finn got us tickets out.
Yes.
We went straight to the airport that day. I was like, we need to. We're not lingering here. That we're not going to be able to do anything. Yeah. So I think I was.
Remember how scary it was at the airport? Because people were thinking it was on planes. And
going to say is that what I didn't realise when we got to the airport, there was this real eerie feeling in the airport. A lot of the flights have been cancelled. And then what I didn't realise is one of the planes that went into 9/11 actually left from Boston. So it was a Boston to New York flight. So someone told us so that's why the airport was so eerie, and that's why they cancelled a lot of the flights. Yeah, because one of the planes went into there. And at that stage, they didn't know what kind of attack it was. You know, they didn't know that it turned out to be just two young brothers, which that's what it turned out to be. But
it's pretty scary, wasn't it?
It was scary.
It's such a significant event for both of us that we were so excited about.
Yeah, I know.
To be a part of. And we told the whole world that we were going.
Well, I think that my last Facebook post before we went off on that run was me with the Boston, because I had the Boston Marathon top and it said it's still got Boston and it had the date in the back, and it was just a headshot of the back of my it was a running, like a
running jacket.
Yeah, running jacket and my hair, and it was just, that was it. That was so it was very clear. Everybody and his dog knew that we were in Boston doing that marathon. And our poor husband's at home, obviously got woke up at 5 a.m. with texts and messages. Are they okay? Is anyone okay? You know, just several people kept coming to the door, and they'd just open the door and go, yep, she's fine. And then close the door. Just so many people knew that we were away.
It was pretty horrific, wasn't it, for the kids? That's what I remember is Nick talking about all the images on the telly and the kids waking up and, you know, they saying that's Boston Marathon, that's where Mum is.
Yeah, my kids were probably younger than yours, so they probably didn't fully understand it, I don't think. Whereas I know your kids were older, aren't they? They're probably 2 or 3 years older than mine, so they probably just were more aware of what was happening.
Yes.
Even now, my kids were just too little to comprehend it. I think it probably would have a bigger impact on them now, but I can see how yours definitely did affect those. And you did worry because we had New York planned as well. That was in April. And we were supposed to be going to New York.
In 6 months later.
Yeah, 6 months later.
And we were taking a group. And I was like, oh, do we go? Do we not go?
Do we not go? What do you do? And I think one of the things I've come to realise is that, and it's like now with COVID, you can't stop your life. You've still got to live, and you've still got to do these things.
Time keeps moving.
You've got to assess the risk, and is it worth it to you, and how important it is to you to go. But at the end of the day, travel is important to me. It's a big part of what I do. I get a lot of joy from it. So that event was not going to stop me from doing other events. It may happen again, but...
And that was a big decision for us because, you know, it was putting our husbands and our kids through it again. And I know my kids were actually really quite worried about us going. But we had the group going, and I don't know what New York was for you like that year, but I remember thinking about the bombs when I was there and all the security that they had. I was much more aware of it.
I remember going driving over the bridge to the start line and seeing just SWAT teams on all the roofs. So they were obviously really paranoid about something happening again. And I remember all the helicopters. And I actually remember running through Central Park maybe a couple of K before the end, and someone jumping on a balloon and being being actually quite scared, like, you know, just kind of that shock. And then you just, you know, and again, I think I was incredibly emotional when I finished that New York marathon, but I think a lot of it was just sort of all the pent up angst from Boston. I remember crying, like sobbing at the end of it, and everyone just thought it was because of the marathon, you know, finishing the marathon, but I think it was just a lot of
emotion.
Yeah, which, you know, you kind of keep in a lot.
And do you think you still have that sort of in you, that sort of emotion from Boston, or?
No, I think it is something that just, like most things, time heals all these sort of, I guess, challenges that you deal with, or situations that you find yourself in. I think time does heal these things. But I don't know. I been back to. Yeah, so I went and did another New York Marathon, and
we've been lucky.
We've been very lucky to a New York Marathon. So when I did my second one, I don't remember thinking about Boston. I just remember it being a big celebration.
Yeah. So what's been your best marathon? How many have you done?
I have done 35.
35 marathons.
35
what has been the
marathons,
best one for you?
That's a really, really good question. There's a marathon in the Outback called the Uluru Marathon, the Outback Marathon.
That was a good one too.
I think that was one of the ones that I will always be really special because it was such a unique place to run.
So spiritual, isn't it?
I think that's it. Like you do sort of feel really connected to Australia and the land, and I don't know, and it was so
really
well managed.
Special, isn't it?
You know, the whole event was so.
And having the kids there and the Aboriginal people who also run.
And the other thing about that event was that it was every single person was celebrated. It was one of them.
Yes.
I think it's the only event I've been on where the winner and the top three people are not they are celebrated, but it's not that big a deal.
Yes. It's everybody.
Everybody.
But that's like every marathon, isn't it? Like really everyone gets the same medal.
Yeah, everyone just get the same medal. But that one I just remember thinking it was just very equal. It was kind of like it was just a big Sunday run almost.
And you did the full and I did the half, and we both actually got on the podium.
We did get on
that
the
was
podium.
really special.
It was very special.
that was really good because I turned off because of my broken foot.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah,
so I decided I was in third place, so I'd take the medal.
The half.
I think that is a really beautiful one too. So I mean, you've gone from actually never being able to run to now being, running 35 marathons. What tips would you give to someone who thought they weren't a runner? What tips could you give somebody?
You've really got to enjoy the process and not get too hung up on the end goal.
And you do it little by little, don't you? Don't focus on that 42.
Little by little.
Yeah, it's too overwhelming.
Yeah, and run walk is fine, but you've got to enjoy the run walk. Yeah. And I think that looking back in Sydney, that's probably what I didn't do, is that you would just go and do 5K and it would be torturous, and then I'd never do it again. So I think the tip would be to make it fun and make it enjoyable on the day-to-day.
Yes. And that's finding exercise that's not necessarily running too.
Yeah.
You've been training with His and Her Time for 12 years.
Yep.
And, you don't just run.
No.
You do that cross-training, which I think's, interesting when we compare ourselves to just running groups. We used to talk about it when we ran. In fact, we were faster than a lot of people who had run so much more than we had.
Yep.
Because we did that cross-training as well.
Yeah, I think. And finding the groups, I think that's the other thing, is what makes it funny is finding, a friendship or, that we've obviously developed over the years, or a group that you enjoy running with. And I think it's that you've got to make it fun. So it's important to have those connections when you run. I think runners who just go out and run on their own, and they might get through a couple, but it just doesn't last. There's no longevity because it actually eventually ends up boring because you're just on your own.
And particularly if you don't like exercise, if you don't really like exercise, why would you go and run by yourself? I mean, I've done so many marathons, yet I hate running by myself. Yeah. You know that, I like talking with people. That's my outlet. And I think you also talked about that routine ticking off, having a diary and ticking off sessions, which I think is really important.
Yeah. And not everybody is like that, but I know for myself that, I love a 20-week plan that I can just tick, and I can sort of see myself slowly progressing through the weeks. The runs getting longer and just slowly building up. So I kind of like that enforced patience.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and I always do feel a bit sad the week of marathon week, or even the 2 weeks. Like once the taper starts, I always sort of do get a bit sort of, it's coming to the end, and because it is the journey that I sort of enjoy.
Yes. The other thing I know that's really important to you is diet.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell us about that and fuel for a marathon?
Yeah. So again, that's sort of been a journey along the way that I've sort of tweaked as I've developed. But for me, when I talk about diet, I kind of think of it as nutrition. And I found that the better I eat, the easier and more comfortable the runs are. So that's kind of, I think that's what keeps me focused on nutrition and food, is that the healthier I eat, the better I run. And it's as
So what
simple as that.
what do you eat before your long runs and before marathons?
So I'm pretty consistent. So I would have like toast and banana and nut butter in the mornings before. I would have sushi or some rice-based, probably sushi for lunch. And I would have a pasta, like a simple pasta dish the night before.
Yeah.
And I would kind of do that on the long runs very regularly. So once I'm kind of getting up to those long runs, that's exactly what I do. I did the same thing each day before because I know it sits well and I'm going to be full of energy.
So you practice that in your long runs,
Yeah,
and then
when
you
I
can
know what
execute
works.
it when you do your marathon.
Yeah.
What about the morning of a marathon?
Yes, so the morning of a marathon, I'd have a banana, some toast, and some nut butter. And I'd make sure I was hydrated properly. I'd have a coffee. So again, I've kind of tweaked it over the years. Some people like porridge, some people like yogurt, but for me, it just doesn't sit well with my stomach. So that's kind of what I would eat before I go. But I definitely always eat before a long run for sure.
And what about during the run?
Yep, during the run, I've kind of toyed over the years with different things, but I've found a gel that works for me. And if it's summer, I'd find I've got a hydration powder that I use mixed with water. So those two things I'd have during the run. But again, I'm pretty strict. Once I run over an hour and a half, I will force myself to have a gel, even though they're not nice, and even though
So it's an hour and a half.
Yeah. Otherwise, I find I get tired and then I run sloppy, and then I end up with some sort of gait issue, and then my back gets sore or something gets sore. So for me, it's not about, a lot of people, like to run fasted, and I can do 30K without any food. And I find that you
need it.
Yeah, you need something, and
So through a marathon, how many gels would you have?
Yeah, 4 or 5.
Right. So an hour and a half, and then or an hour.
Yeah, so I would alternate. So I kind of, again, I've tweaked along the way. So I would alternate between gels and the little goos, the little chews.
Yes.
So I will do either or. So after 34 minutes, I'll have a couple of chews, and then after another 35 minutes, I'll have 30 to 40 minutes, I'll have a gel, and then I'll have a goo, and then I'll have a gel, and then I'll have a goo, and then I'll have a gel.
So every 30 minutes you sort of feeding yourself?
I think so. And I think the trick is with those is you don't need to consume the whole gel. You just need to trick your body into thinking that you're actually, okay, if you don't have anything for an hour and a half and you've been running, your body's going to think, okay, this is crazy, I'm not getting any fuel, and it will slowly start shutting down. Whereas if you have something, your brain thinks, oh, yeah, food's on its way, I can keep on going. So I do think it's important to have it regularly.
Yes. What about hydration? You did talk about hydration. Do you start hydrating in the lead up to, and when do you do that?
Yeah, so again, I think it's really important for your body always to be hydrated, and I don't think you can't guzzle water 2 days before and think that's going to get you through. So at the minimum, you want to be really focused 2 weeks before the marathon to make sure you're hydrated and that you're constantly drinking water.
Constantly drinking water right throughout the day.
Constantly sipping.
So do you have a measure of that, or do you just make sure you're just drinking?
I know, so I'd make sure my urine's always kind of a clear colour. If it's dark, then I know I'm not drinking enough. So once I get to that level, then I'll slowly sip. But again, it's about being gradual throughout the day, not just gulping, 2 glasses of water during the morning and think, right, that's it, my water's done. Kind of that constant sipping.
And what about, there was a time where we had Gatorades, the 2, 3, 4 days. Yeah. Do you still do that?
No, I don't still do that. But I have done that. I think in the Boston days, that's what we would be doing. We would be having the Gatorade because we thought that was the right way to go. But you certainly don't need that amount of sugar.
Yeah.
And it's, for now, I think actually, so I went through this where I wean myself off sugar and I would go a year or so without sugar, and then I did a marathon and I went back to my old prep where I did do 2 Gatorades the day before, one of the morning of, and then that morning of the marathon everything just came away. So I basically started the marathon with no fuel whatsoever because the Gatorade just flushed everything out.
Oh, that's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think that's another key tip actually, is that you never do anything. You need to practice these things in your long runs during up to the marathon. Never get some wisdom from the expo 2 days before. Oh, this is what you need for your marathon run. Oh, I'm going to try this brand new gel. This is it. Don't do that. It's a mistake. You need to just stick with what you've done.
And I think that's a really important point, is that you find a plan and you stick to it. It's like having a baby, isn't it? There's so many different voices that can tell you what to do. But if you believe in your plan and your coach, you just listen to them and execute it. But you will get differing views, and people will say, no, that's wrong, I did it this way and that way. But once you start going into someone else's plan, you can get yourself really confused. So just pick a plan, stick to it, and then work out the way that your food and your hydration in the lead up.
And there is no right and wrong. What works for them is fine. You know, they're giving you their best advice because that's what really works for them. But you've got to work out what works for you and then stick to that.
Yeah, and I think you choose one person to listen to because, you know, there's lots of books, you know, you and I have read so many books and so many different ideas, and you can take bits and pieces from everywhere, but as long as you believe in something and have something that's really strong for you, then I think that's really important that you just go, okay, I know that you do this, Chantel, you just stick to something and you stick to it like glue. Which is wonderful. So, Chantel, thanks for coming in and speaking and sharing your stories and your information with us today. It's been really great to have you.